for you if you become sick. Now, you know the number one reason most people fall into poverty and file for bankruptcy is because they get sick. It's usually an illness-related matter. So it's because of maybe a huge hospital bill they can't pay. A huge hospital bill they can't pay, which ends up destroying their credit. Or you have other situations where the person just gets sick and can't work any longer. So you have the family going into poverty. Most of these people do have college degrees, and they do have great educations. But see, a great education is not a shelter from these situations, which are the main situations you will face as you age. Everyone ages, everyone gets older, and everyone is not going to want to work into their old age. But see, we are told to believe that a college education and a school degree is what's going to protect you from that situation. So because of this mindset, most people, once they fall sick, they have no type of financial defense set up. They have been taught that having a job and the ticket to a job is all you need. And obviously this is not the case by the point I just made. How is getting an expensive education, racking up a bunch of debt, and entering the global marketplace a good fallback plan when there are literally millions of people entering that same economy who are willing and ready to do the same job for 1/10 of your pay with 1/12 of your living expenses and 0% of your debt? Because schools are a lot cheaper abroad, so you have people graduating from Asia, from India, who didn't have to get a loan to go to school. They just paid for it cash because it was cheap. You don't have that in America. You have $100,000 of debt, maybe more, maybe less, depending. Either way, you have some loans to pay back. And when you're competing with people who are coming from countries where the cost of living is about less than 10% of your cost of living, how do you expect to be as competitive as those people? Now, do you think that just because you live in America, you are more valuable than those people? Do you think that you learning how to program a computer, you should be paid more than someone who learned how to program a computer in India or in Japan? No, that's not the case. The only thing that's keeping this going, that's keeping this facade going, is protection from the government. If it wasn't for the laws preventing these people from competing with you to the full extent, these positions that you hold so highly today would not exist. And at the very best, they wouldn't be worth going into six-figure debts for. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you pull all of the above together with the fact that school overcharged on purpose and a business is just like any other, it becomes obvious that the reason this mindset persists is the result of a very successful marketing campaign. Now, please call me with your thoughts, contentions, and ideas. I'm always open to debate, which is not a bad thing. Another product of this schooling society is the mass belief that being an argumentative person is a bad thing. Actually not. That is really a habit that we have learned from teachers not wanting to be argued with. And that's what I say it is because that's what the book says it is, and you better say that's what it is or we're going to have problems. This is pretty much the mindset that teachers have when dealing with students in their class. And the rest of the class typically just get mad at you for making the teacher mad. So this is how, just a microcosm of how we are trained to jump to the defense of those people who hold authority, not necessarily because they're right, not necessarily because they thought about what they're saying, but simply because they're in a position of importance. Now, please call into this show. We host every day at 3:30 p.m. Central. You could call in at 646-716-9049 to discuss how it is that people still believe to this day that having a school education is the only thing, is the best sort of protection against financial hardship. Because it doesn't really matter what kind of job you have. If you get sick, you're not really going to be able to keep working. And the only way you're going to keep benefiting after you're sick is because there are laws in place that make that company have to pay you. In the real world, you don't pay someone who doesn't work. In the real world, when the horse gets sick, the farmer puts it out of his misery. It doesn't just sit there and put it on welfare. It's a useless animal. It's not serving the purpose anymore. That's what happens in the real world to people who get sick. So you have a lot of people who are able to keep this illusion going by the government stepping in and forcing people to keep paying them. When, in reality, what you should have been doing with your time was not really getting the ticket to work for someone else. What you should have been doing is building your own businesses, owning your own property. that's going to pay you and take care of you far after you're still able to work. This was the American dream back in the day. Everybody owning their own property and having money coming in because of work they've put in the past, to where you don't have to keep working. Now, the thing is, a lot of people, we kind of had a similar thing with the stock market, to where, well, if you work for this company, then, you get stock options, you get a share into the company. But the problem with that is you're still not building your own. You're riding the ticket to someone else's fame. And if that person on the executive level is making mistakes that end up costing you your future, see, they're not going to suffer as hard as you are, because that was your only plan. Now, if you do that on the side, that's all fine. But the thing you have to always keep in mind is that you should be more focused on building your own legacy, so to speak. But please call into this show if you have any questions, remarks, comments, whatever. And, we could discuss the topic of whether dropouts should really feel bad at all for not following the traditional route. This show is called the Dropout Rebellion. You could call in at 646-716-9094. And the topic today is school a good fallback plan? Everybody tells you, hey, go to school, just get a degree. That's a good backup plan. You know what I mean? As long as you get your education, as long as you get your degree, then you don't really have to worry about much. The money will come rolling in. And as we get older and as the world begins to change, we realize this is not true. This may have been true when America was a powerhouse, but this is not true anymore, because we have competition from people who don't really have to spend as much money as we do to get to those positions, which is why the whole thing is a bad place. Now, if you work for yourself and own a business like I do, then you're more than welcome to call into this show. And you could also make sure to check out the website at dropoutrebellion.blogspot.com, where you could get more information, some more background information, some research, and some articles, videos you could watch that'll give you more, background information on what the education system really is. Well, I shouldn't say education system. I should say the school system really is, because education is not the same thing as schooling. And that's a big misconception that's got everybody confused, to where when people drop out, they generally drop out from education altogether, instead of just dropping out from school and focusing on their own personal education. And what this show discusses, as the future shows are going to get into, we're going to interview hosts, have some guests on the show to talk about alternatives, to talk about ways in which people who've dropped out could make the best use of their time and actually create a life for themselves based on their own strengths and talents. That's not so much clear cut to fit into the system that's been put out by everybody. So you don't have to follow the same road that everyone else is following to be successful. That was never the case. That's not reality. In reality, in order to be successful, you become successful by solving problems, by coming up with ideas that help make other people's lives easier. That's where the money comes from. So when you generate money in the truly free system, when you generate money, you're generating money because you're redirecting. If somebody was going to spend $5-10 to get their car fixed, and then came out with this invention of this idea that cuts the cost down to $3, you just saved that person $7. So when you generate money, what you're really doing is saving money for other people to go do other stuff with their money, allowing them to focus on other things, which is why society gets better and better over time. And if this is what we really had going on, the prices of items and the prices of things in the stores and other places would constantly be getting cheaper over time. But see, we have the opposite. We have all been trained through schooling that inflation is a good thing. The price of everything goes up and up and up every year. How does the price of things keep going up when we are constantly coming out with inventions that make the price of things cheaper? You see what I mean? That doesn't seem to make any sense. How is housing becoming more expensive when we're not just limited to the amount of land there is, we could build up? So the same amount of land that before we had the technology, the whatever, the same amount of land that you could have used to build one little apartment, you can now use that to build a whole complex or a skyscraper, whatever. And that's reducing the need to use any land around it. How should the price of housing become more and more expensive if that is what is really going on? Well, that's because we have something else going on. We don't have a truly free system. We have a system where the wealth is rerouted to places where it shouldn't go, and that's pretty much the side effect of having all these laws constantly getting passed, is pretty much that energy is going to be redirected where it shouldn't have went in the first place. So when you see everybody trying to tell you that inflation is a constant, inflation is a normal thing, that is a direct result of school education. Because in the natural world, with all the technological advances we are constantly coming out with, everything should be getting cheaper. And really, if you do a comparison, you could even see that the segments of the market that are not as highly regulated as other segments, the price is to drop over time. I've seen this show by John Stossel about healthcare, where he goes into the healthcare system, and he talks about Canada and how in Canada you have it that, they have the free healthcare system, all the laws, regulations saying that doctors have to do this, doctors have to do that, whatever, and people are proud of the government, whatever. Well, you have a phenomenon in Canada that there's pretty long waiting lists to get treated as a human being. So if you're a person who needs to be treated for a medical condition, most of the time there's a long waiting list to get seen and treated. There's many people who go into this, and I'm not really going to go into all the details, but just to illustrate the example, when you look into the pet treatments, the veterinary doctors, the people who treat animals, they're almost not regulated at all. And healthcare is not free for pets. So people still have to pay out of pocket to take care of their pets when they don't have to pay to treat themselves. But the difference you have here is that pet healthcare, pets get treated almost instantly. They don't have to wait nowhere near as long as people have to wait because it's a competitive business that hasn't been overly regulated. So people are able to go in and actually compete to provide the service at the lowest cost and to provide the service in the way that people really want it. And there's no way people would really want a healthcare service that you have to wait for months and months to get essential, treatment that might leave you dead if you don't get it. No matter whether it's free or not, the thing about it is healthcare is not something you could wait on. It's something you kind of have to get treated right away. And I wouldn't sit there waiting for a couple of weeks with a tummy ache. So you have a lot of Canadians actually leave the country to get treated. Please call into the show with your opinions. Let us know what you think about the show. We're talking about how education, school education specifically, may not be the best backup plan to be successful in life. And we were just talking about doctors in Canada and how your pet is probably more likely to get treated faster and cheaper than you are, even though it's almost the same procedures. It's almost the same thing. It's the same procedures, almost the same medicine, almost the same doctors. But the thing is, these doctors who are not as regulated are free to try different things, which is what is holding back the general medical system into where there's a bottleneck. Because the thing is, when people say they want something for free,